Hey y'all, welcome back to Krista's Kitchen. So today we're making some cheesy meatball soup. Now you can make your own meatballs for this if you like, but I'm using store-bought meatballs just to speed up the process. And this, I'm also going to use my Ninja Foodi to cook it in, but this can be done on the stovetop. I'm just using this because I love my Ninja Foodi, and it can all be done right here instead of me having to heat everything on the stove and trying to bring y'all in that small space. So I'm going to bring y'all closer to the table and let y'all see everything that's going into this pot. It's a very quick and easy recipe. Now you can bulk this up and make it a much larger soup if you like, but it's very nice that a bowl of it is only like 400 calories, even with all of this in it, because your carrots and things kind of bulk it up and take some of that calorie away. So 400 for one single cup, 400 calories for one single cup is a lot, but you can add a lot more spinach and broth and things to this to kind of thin it out a little bit and make it less calorie dense. But super yummy, super comforting, and you can make it as difficult or as easy as you like. I'm going to move you over and we'll get started. Alright y'all, so we have about a tablespoon of olive oil heating up in the bottom of our pan, and we're just going to lay in our meatballs. Now these are frozen meatballs, so they are going to pop and sizzle for just a minute. Now if you're making, we're going to dump the whole pan. If you're making fresh meatballs, then you don't have to add the oil. But in our Ninja Foodi, we just have it on the sear saute function. If you're on the stovetop, you just want to put it at a medium heat. With us putting the meatballs in right now, we just want to brown the outside. Again, if you're using homemade meatballs, you're just going to brown the outside. We're going to cook and get them cooked all the way through in just a few minutes. But right now, frozen or homemade, we're just worried about browning. And in this pot, we have a little over a pound of meatballs. So again, if you're making your own homemade ones, you're just going to use about a pound of ground meat, your breadcrumbs, your eggs, season them how you like, and go from there. I'm just going for simplicity today. So we have about a pound of meatballs in the bottom of this. We're just trying to get a little sear and texture on the outside of them. We're not worried about cooking them or heating them all the way through at this point. We're going to do that in just a minute when we start adding in our carrots and celery and things. I like my Ninja Foodi for the fact that I can do all of this in this one little spot, and if I wanted to pressure cook or do something else to it, I can do that, but it's as easy as just using it as a stovetop function. So just tossing these around. You get those little sear on a few different sides. And just kind of knock the cold off of them coming from the freezer. So, and this will feed, depending on how large of a bowl you want, but this will feed about, I'd say about 4 or 5 people. If you got children, obviously it's going to feed more. And you can easily double or triple this recipe. I'd probably factor in about a quarter of a pound per adult, depending on their appetite. Alright, I'm getting a pretty good sear on them. So now I'm just going to move them back to the bowl for just a minute. I want to soften up my celery and my onions before adding in the rest of my veggies. If you're not worried about softening yours, then you could just start tossing in these next few ingredients with the meatballs, but I like them to be a lot softer in my soup. So we're just moving these back to the same bowl they were in. And you see why I like using pre-made meatballs? It speeds things up considerably. Now if you're wanting, if you have a really good meatball recipe that you already used, then go with that. So I'm adding in about 1/4 of a chopped onion. Now this was a large onion, so maybe about 1/2 of a cup of onion. And then a cup of celery. And we're just going to let this soften for just a minute. Now I do have this on the high setting for the Ninja Foodi, but you can have it on a medium-high heat, but on the stove top you want that medium to medium-high heat for sure. You don't want it on the high setting. So I'm going to let that cook for just a minute or two. Okay, y'all. So one thing I did forget to mention, if you're making homemade meatballs and you have a lot of excess oil, you want to drain that off before you toss in your onions and peppers. We already have the flavor from the meat. We don't need to add the extra grease and make it a really greasy soup. It's already going to be pretty rich as it is. So we got those softened up. We're going to toss in a can of corn, drained, about 1 or 2 medium carrots sliced up. This was just one large one that's sliced up, and I'd say maybe about 1/2 of a cup. And 1 large diced potato. And toss this all together. Now we're going to add in 2 cups of water. And y'all know I love my beef base, my chicken base, and everything like that. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon, well, probably about 2 teaspoons of beef base in this. If you have bouillon cubes, you can use 2 bouillon cubes. If you don't have beef base or bouillon cubes and you want to use just plain beef broth, just use about 2 cups of beef broth, and we all get the same result. But this is a 1/2 teaspoon measuring, so I'm going to just put that in. But either 2 bouillon cubes, about 2 teaspoons of beef base, or just 2 cups of beef broth, and you get all the same results. I love my beef base for the convenience. I can just keep it in the fridge and go to it as I need. And to me, it's very cost effective. The beef base for this whole container cost, I think, about somewhere between $3 and $5. And you got to think about how often I use this. I get way more than 5 cans of beef broth out of it. Okay, y'all. So we're going to let that come up to a boil, and then we'll move on to our next. Oh, I almost forgot. I want to add in a few splashes of hot sauce. And if you don't like hot sauce, you can definitely skip this. But just a few splashes of hot sauce. And do a few more. It gives a little bit of a tang. That's nice. But we're going to let this come up to a boil, and then we'll move on to our next steps. Now, if you have raw meatballs or homemade meatballs, put them back in at this point and let them continue to cook with the potatoes and everything. Mine are already done, so I'm just going to add them in the last few minutes. But we'll let this come up to a boil, and I'll see y'all back in just a few minutes. Okay, y'all, we're up to a full boil. So I'm going to turn our Ninja Foodi down to a medium heat. And we're going to add our meatballs back in. Now remember, if you have homemade meatballs, your meatballs are already in. And I'm just going to let this cook for about a half hour. And that'll get these potatoes, carrots, and everything nice and tender, and also get these meatballs, the flavor incorporated into the juice a little bit. I'm just kind of tuck them in there. So we're going to let this cook on a medium heat for a half hour, and I'll see y'all back. Alright, y'all. So we're about 25 minutes in, and our potatoes are nice and tender, our carrots are nice and tender. So now we're going to add my favorite part, which y'all see. So just a jar of cheese sauce or queso sauce, whatever you call it, but it's the cheese sauce. You want to use this kind of cheese sauce or cheese whiz, whatever your preference is. But this is how we're going to get that cheesy version of or the cheesy part of our cheesy meatball soup. So we're just going to empty the whole jar in, and this just makes it, this is where the calories come from, to tell you the truth, out of this recipe. Otherwise it's a fairly healthy recipe. Now you may be able to leave this part out. I've never done it without it, and make this still, but this is what just puts it over the top. We're just going to mix this around, and all we need now is for this cheese to get heated through, and this will be ready to eat. So it doesn't take but just a minute at this point. Now, if you want the original recipe for where this came from, this is a Taste of Home recipe. So you can go look on their website. It's called Cheesy Meatball Soup. And theirs gives you a way to make it with homemade meatballs. And now theirs just have a little bit less corn. And theirs has the exact measurements. I'm not going to waste a half of a carrot or a part of a potato. So that's why y'all will see me say, like, I'll use 1 large potato or 2 medium carrots. Because to me, that's easier measurements than saying, well, what do you do with the other half of that, like small carrot or something. So I use in those kind of measurements instead. But we're just letting this heat through for just a second, and it will be all ready. Now, with it being in this Ninja Foodi, if you wanted to make this a pressure cooker recipe and speed things up, you definitely could. I probably wouldn't go over maybe 3 minutes on the pressure cooker setting, but think of how fast you could have this done if you actually put on the pressure lid and made this a pressure cooker recipe. You could get to the point, now that's before the cheese sauce. You can always test things out, but personally I wouldn't do the pressure cooker recipe part with the cheese sauce. I just think you're running the risk of scorching the cheese. But all the way up until this point, if you wanted, instead of sauteing it or boiling it for 25 minutes, put that pressure cooker lid on and cook it for maybe 3 minutes. And the reason I say 3 minutes is whenever I make mashed potatoes and I have much bigger chunks of potatoes, I only go for 5 minutes at that. So I really think that'll be good with the sizing of what everything is in here. But enough talk. Our cheese sauce should be heated all the way through. I'm just going to turn this off so that it's not cooking any longer. And we're going to serve some up. This is going to be piping hot, but that's okay. Now, if you have some nice French bread or a little baguette or something, that would work wonderfully with this too. So we're just going to serve a little bit up. I'm going to scoot the camera back and I'm going to let y'all see what it looks like. Okay, y'all, so I'm going to make this outro nice and short because I'm ready to eat. I'm starving. We have our cheesy meatball soup and already yumminess. Now, one reason I love the chip cheese dip is because it has that little bit of heat with it also. So if you don't like that, just skip that or take the hot sauce splashes out. That way it'll balance. It's not overly hot, but it does have a little bit of heat to it. But quick and easy, and remember, even if you don't have a Ninja Foodi, you can make this on the stovetop just the same. But thank y'all for joining us, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.